Hi, I'm Laurie Friedrich, and today we're live at the Tech Edge Conference, and I'm excited to introduce you to Rob McEntarffer. He's an assessment and evaluation specialist at Lincoln Public Schools. Morning, Rob. How are you?
Morning. I'm fine. Thanks.
Very good. Well, thanks for being with us today. I know you're going to be talking a little bit about formative assessment and how that might help teachers and students. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And first, Christy Deal, my co-presenter, wasn't able to be here for this video thing, but we're going to be presenting together a little bit later. And this is a talk that we've given several times within Lincoln Public Schools, and twice before, you would know better than I have, I think twice before at Tech Edge. And it's something we're very excited about. It's our favorite part of our job responsibilities in the assessment office. So formative assessment is one of those educational words that has been used a lot as in recent years, and maybe too much. I get concerned that it's losing a bit of its meaning because it's getting thrown around a lot. But what Christy and I mean by formative assessment is anytime a teacher or a student uses assessment data as part of the learning process to make a change. So usually when we think about assessment data, we're thinking about a summative process. I know when I was in the classroom, I taught for a long time at Lincoln Southeast, and when I gathered assessment data in my classroom, I graded it. Students got it back with a percentage across the top, and it went in my spreadsheet for grades, and I smushed all those together for their final grade. I intended some of those assignments to be practice, homework assignments and things like that, but I never really treated them like practice because I put a grade on them and I included the final grade. So the formative assessment process, when Christy and I talk about it, it's doing something different with those assessment data. It's having students do something, and then we look at it as teachers, or students look at each other's work, and feedback is given, and then students use the feedback to make a change, or teachers use feedback from the student work to make a change. And that's a formative assessment process. So what we're going to talk about here in a little while are ways to leverage technology to facilitate parts of that formative assessment process. So for example, one of the we changed it this year, so it's going to be very different from what you've seen before. We took a model lesson plan, and we showed, here's the lesson plan. It happens to be a 4th grade social studies lesson plan on the Oregon Trail, and there are several steps in the lesson plan where the lesson plan writers said, and have students do this kind of work as an exit ticket, or have students do this kind of work as practice. And we looked at their processes and thought, oh, we could use WallWisher for that, which is a website. It's a communal place to keep sticky notes. So where we're at right now with WallWisher is we're using it as kind of as a pre-assessment actually, where students do a KWL chart, what I know, what I want to learn, and what I've learned chart at the very beginning of the lesson. And students fill out the what I know part about the Oregon Trail and the history of Nebraska at that time. And then teachers look at what students have written, and instead of grading it, there's no evaluation in this part. The teacher looks at it to figure out, okay, here's the raw material my students are starting with. So before I start this Oregon Trail lesson, here's what I need to go over, or here's what I don't need to go over, and that can be more time efficient at the end. There's a service called Jing, or any screencasting service. So flipping to the very end of the lesson, at the very end of the lesson, what students do is they write their answer after having read several primary documents. They use evidence from those documents. They know they're going to be writing their answer, and we make this a big deal to them, their answer to the framing question, which is how did the Oregon Trail affect the lives of Native Americans? That's a really complicated question. It's a real history question. It's something historians might write an entire book about. So the students have read several primary documents, and they've been working this whole time to get ready to write their answer. Before they go game time, before they write the final draft of their answer, what Christian and I are proposing is they're invited to write a rough draft of their final answer. And then we get an electronic copy of that, okay? Either a PDF of the student writing, or maybe the student enters that. And normally what a teacher would have to do, what I had to do when I was in my classroom at Southeast, is I would take all those pieces of paper home, and then I would write comments in the margin, and I would circle things, and then I might put a grade on it, I might not. And I would give it back to the students, and I would say, okay, use these comments, and then I would get the final copies back. What was a hassle for me as a teacher, and what I always wondered is, I never had a really good way to figure out which of my comments students used and why. if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And also, teachers know that it takes epic amounts of time to go through student papers and make those written comments. Also, I have crummy handwriting, so I wasn't sure. Students told me sometimes they just couldn't read it. So what we're proposing, and I got this idea from a problem-based learning blog that I really like, was you have on the screen in front of you, you have the student work, copy of the student work, and then you turn on your screencaster. So a screencaster just records your voice and records whatever you're doing on screen. So then what I do on screen is I've got some program up, Adobe, I just blanked on the other one that I used, but some product, some application where you can do markup on an electronic file. And I just talk my way through the student paper. Okay, up here I see you gathering evidence from this document, and I highlight that or I circle that. And you're gathering evidence from 2 other documents down here. So that puts you here on the rubric, and then I change over to the rubric on the screen, and I highlight where I think they are on the rubric. But then here's what you can do next. You start to evaluate the original painting up here, but you kind of stop short. So take this part and go on a little bit and tell me how the evidence influences your interpretation of the original source, and that will move you to here on the rubric. And then I just turned the screencasting off, and I timed it, and it took me 2.5 minutes. And that was one paper. So that you save that as an electronic file, and you get it somewhere where the students can see it. Google Docs, if your district uses that. Our district uses DocuShare. However teachers and students share electronic files. You could also do it as an email, I suppose.
Sure.
Edmodo would work slick.
Yes.
But then what the student does, instead of getting the paper back, the student opens that file, and they see and hear me talk through their paper. So it's almost as good as a one-on-one conference that no teacher has time to do with every single student for every single assignment. And I think, I haven't tested this out, so I would love it if some teachers tested this, to see what that would be like as a class set. How long it would take you to screencast a class set. And then what I would want students to do is when they turn in their final product, I picture them writing a little paragraph, and here's how I used the comments that you told me in the screencast.
Wow,
yeah,
that's powerful.
So those are 2 examples. We've got 2 more examples in our presentation about using technology to help students, to facilitate, to increase the chances that students will actually use all of the comments that teachers spend acres of time giving them. That's it.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing those great ideas.
Sure.
We hope they'll be helpful for all the teachers. Thanks again. Rob McEntarffer from Lincoln Public Schools.